And tonight we have a special interview right here, ladies and gentlemen. This very crazy situation happening in Midland, Texas. It's heating up with the local elections. They have a massive bond slash debt on the ballot, and a lot of weird things have been happening here in Midland, Texas. Now, this person on the phone is the person that had their sign taken in the grassland area. Now, if you don't mind, can you please introduce that as to who you are and where you're from? Go ahead.
Yeah, Nino. My name is Laurie Clark, and the video that you posted on Facebook was the video that was off of my Ring camera at 10:28 on April the 22nd, yesterday.
Okay. And what exactly happened there? Because obviously, I'm going to just give a quick the details. Your sign was taken off of your yard, correct?
Correct. She actually had to step into my yard because I had it set back into my yard off the sidewalk. So it wasn't in a major thoroughfare. It was not illegal in any way, but yet she took it.
And when you say she, who do you mean by she?
Uh, she was the code enforcement officer that you can see walking down my sidewalk with my vote no sign.
Okay, so when you seen this, what'd you think about this happening? Because this is it's very interesting that this happened on the first day of early voting. Correct? It's kind of weird that code enforcement is out there going into residential neighborhoods and taking people's signs. What'd you think about this when you first noticed it?
I agree. I didn't really have all the facts at the time that I posted the video on Nextdoor. So I spoke with my neighbor and asked if they picked up anything on their camera. And she said, I actually talked to the woman. She said she was from code enforcement. She had a City of Midland polo shirt on. And then the logo on the side of the truck was also City of Midland code enforcement. And she said that she actually asked her why she was taking my sign. And she said, I'm just doing my job. And she said, I'm doing what I was told to do.
Okay, so she actually took the sign off of your yard, correct, and the yard of your neighbor. So two signs.
Correct. But now they had a pro bond sign in their yard.
Oh, hold on. So this is pretty interesting. So she took both of y'all signs.
Correct. And and you know, I like I said, I didn't even have the whole story at the time until I saw my neighbor later and she told me about that conversation that she had with code enforcement. And I will also say there was another resident at the other end of my street who had a vote no sign for the bond. Her sign was also taken because I knew that there was one down there. And so I went and I drove down there and she was working in her yard. And I asked her, um, did someone take her sign? And she said, oh my gosh, she goes, it's gone. And I said, let me go see if I've got anything on my Ring camera. And so I went back down there and showed her the video on my Ring camera. And she said, well, I've even got extra signs. So she actually gave me another vote no sign. So I was immediately able to put it back out in my yard.
Okay, so they went through y'all's neighborhood and took. You're saying three signs in total, correct?
That I know of. Yeah. And, I, I walk through the neighborhood quite a bit. And so they actually missed two vote no's at the other end of the street. And so, but the only ones that were missing were two no's and one yes.
Interesting. So you find out about this. This actually makes quite a bit of a stir throughout the city because the video gets dropped and the vote no signs. Well, let's be honest. Either way, taking the vote no or vote yes sign, I think that's wrong. Right? Free speech for everybody. But
Correct.
it seems like the vote no signs have been taken down or actually targeted, in our opinion, being part of the anti bond group. But it's been happening to us for weeks, and it seems kind of odd. If you can kind of, disagree or agree here, it seems odd to me that all of a sudden, after so many weeks of us complaining on Nextdoor and on social media about them taking our signs, that code enforcement gets busted taking signs in a residential neighborhood on your private property, and then
Correct.
the next day they go ahead and start making everything right. Correct? Does that seem kind of odd that they will start doing this? Because, like I said, it's been happening to us for weeks, but then we catch them on camera, and then they actually make a statement and talk about bringing their signs back to these neighborhoods and these yards.
Well, I think it gives it a little bit more credibility when you can see, you've got a lady walking down my sidewalk with my sign, and then obviously a code enforcement truck following her. I mean, you can't argue with that.
I have it right here on the screen. She's walking pretty pretty boldly down the street like she owns the block. It's kind of weird. Okay, so let's get into some other kind of a more deeper dive into in Midland. So I don't know how long you've lived in Midland, but I went and talked to Stuart Doreen. He used to work for MRT, and I interviewed him. And of course, he gave me a canned kind of I would say his answering and the way he answered me was pretty uh, he did it pretty well as far as being a representative for Midland. Nothing too much or
Sure.
nothing too much to say the least. But when you saw Stuart Doreen speak, do you think what he said was true? Now, this is opinion, of course, that he said that there was nobody that was sent or nobody higher above him sent this order to target these vote no signs.
Well, all I know is common sense tells me that that woman that talked to my next door neighbor said, I'm just trying to do my job and I'm only doing what I was told to do. So that right there raises a red flag for me as far as believability as to what the explanations are that are going on.
What do you think's happening here?
I just think that the every day that passes, it kind of stinks and it's getting kind of fishy. And one of the things that has not been brought up that I would like to bring up is recently Midland Chamber of Commerce had I guess, a heads of state meeting down at Bush Center, and it was packed house. And for the first, I want to say 10 to 15 minutes, the executive director for the chamber, he gave the president of Midland College 10 to 15 minutes to speak in favor of the bond. And while on the surface it doesn't seem like there's anything that's unfair or unjust about that, however, the Midland Chamber is funded by Midland Development Corp., which is taxpayer funded.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how are you going to give 10 to 15 minutes for a pro bond presentation, and there is not a rebuttal or a balanced presentation from an anti bond spokesperson?
True.
And you've got taxpayer money that's being used for that opportunity for him to speak.
Do you think there's a bias here?
Well, that's pretty biased when you're not being able, when you're not actually presenting a balanced argument pro or against.
True.
So yeah, I would say that's very unbalanced. And so the more that comes out about it, when it from taking signs to having this presentation that's taxpayer funded which is also wrong and I believe a little bit unethical. When there is not a balanced presentation like that, um, I think that that's abuse of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, So this thing is heating up here in Midland. I think we've been calling it out for a long time. There is a bias here. Do you think the Midland College and the MDC and the city of Midland, do you think they're just all in cahoots together? What do you think is happening, with these all these different entities that seem to be standing together for this huge debt that the taxpayer is going to be responsible for?
Well, I can't make a supposition as to what I think is going on because I really like to deal in facts. And but the fact is you take, for instance, as the Midland College bond was initially presented, it was presented with that $30 million welcome center. And then the proponents of that bond, they say, oh, no, 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 that's been taken out. So it was originally 450 million. So if you take that out, that's $420 million bond. But that wasn't taken out. It was only moved to another subheading. And so therefore, it's to me, it's a little bit disingenuous and it's like a shell game that they're playing with the taxpayers. And the taxpayers should be rising up and be furious about this because it's almost as if the taxpayers' intelligence is being questioned because they think that they can pull the wool over the eyes of the average taxpayer in Midland, and that's wrong.
I totally agree. And then even with them putting this up for election at this time, to me, it's suspicious. They say they just did it because they had to, but nobody really knows about this. I talked to a man yesterday outside of his house, and I asked him if he knew about this. I was block walking, and he said the first time he heard about it was on social media that day. And then I went ahead and gave him a sign. I gave him some information. I told him, I think you might want to know about your taxes being raised, and he was in the dark. It's pretty sad that this is, I think, the tactics they use to push these multi-million dollar slash billion dollar bonds tax increases upon the people. And I think it's not right because we don't have information to make an informed decision as to do we want to vote for or against this massive debt. And we're running out of time.
Correct.
May 3rd is coming up right
Correct.
up on us. And the more and more that we block walk or reach out to people, it's like they never even knew this was up for vote. So we know how low voter turnout is at this time of the year, and then that plus this huge debt that's coming upon us so quickly, it's like I don't know if we even have time to get the information out there to the voters that are going to be affected by it long term. I think that's very disingenuous and it's very it's horrible in my opinion being a tax-paying citizen of Midland. Now, what I'll say is this: do you have any other information that you want to? Well, let's talk about can you talk about John and everybody that went and spoke to Mr. Gonzalez this morning? Can you speak about that?
So yeah. So this morning, um, I received a text actually last night from John Burkholder, and that he wanted to talk to me. And I asked him if he would mind calling me, in the morning, which was this morning. And so what happened is John Burkholder, Amy Stretcher Burks, and Robin Poole, they actually had an impromptu, unplanned meeting with City Manager Tommy Gonzalez this morning. And the purpose of that meeting is to express their anger and frustration of election signs being taken out of private citizens' yards, and they were trespassing as well. And so I think at that time, uh, Tommy Tommy Gonzalez also told them basically what he told me is that he takes the blame for everything because kind of the buck stops with him. And he said that he did not give the directive to take the signs. So the question is who actually did give the directive for the code enforcement officer to say that I am just following orders?
Somebody gave that directive, correct?
Correct. I mean, I I fully believe that there was a directive given because I don't think she just got up that morning and said, "I'm going to go take the signs out of Grassland," and or take them anywhere else out of yards all over the city.
Now they're saying that up to 60 signs, vote no signs were taken. There's people saying that they want this person actually either fired or jailed for basically trespassing and taking someone else's property. What do you want to happen out of all this whole commotion and situation with them illegally taking your sign? What do you want to happen?
Well, number one, I would like to know who did give the directive. And I think that any sanctions or any reprimands that are given to that person, that we should know that as a community because we are affected by their actions. I mean, if we lived in a communist state,
Yeah.
I would say, absolutely, this is what I expect in a communist state, but we don't. And this actually is going against our freedom of speech and and also fair and impartial elections. And so that's what I want is some exposure, some transparency, and some accountability. And I don't think in this case that that's too much to ask for.
No, I believe you're 100% correct. Now, let me ask you one more question. Have they returned your sign? Because I went down there to talk to Stuart Doreen, and he said that they were returning signs today. I've seen reports on certain social media websites where people have said they haven't returned any signs. Did they ever go back and return your sign or your neighbors?
Well, I wasn't home today.
Okay.
And so Tommy called me a second time today and said that he would like to come by and talk to me personally. And I said, I'm not available. And so I don't know.
Hmm.
My best answer is I don't know. Um, but here's, I think that this is an important point is you've got 60 signs. How in the world does that code enforcement officer remember every single address that they took signs from?
That's a good point. And I would even add they know if because Stuart Doreen told me on the recording that someone called in about this. So I would even bet some money on it that they know exactly who called in because I've called the city many times for loose dogs, situations in my neighborhood, and I have to give them my information. So I know they know who made the call if someone actually did make the call. Now, if they'll give us that information, I don't know if that's how it works. But
Because, Nino, I think that the issue there is it's kind of like the whistleblower act. It's like, I don't know that you can make that information public because
true.
that would deter other people from reporting other things.
I fully understand. Now, let me ask you this: with you, unless you want to touch anything else about your sign, I want to ask you about the bond. But you have anything else you want to touch on about the signs or anything in Midland you think there needs to be some light be shed upon?
Well, when I was talking to Tommy Gonzalez this morning, he was saying that, maybe they need to enforce sign placements and things in the future. And I said, well, that's all well and good, but I don't see how you need to address private property signs being removed. To me, that's a no brainer. You don't get
Yeah,
on people's property and you don't take their signs.
totally agree. Okay, so the final question I want to ask you is why do you have a vote no sign in your yard? Why are you against this bond currently?
Because I don't think, and I've looked at the list of the people who were actually on the bond planning committee. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that this was the best that they could come up with. And, it's like if I've got a big purchase personally, I start putting that money away and planning for that purchase.
Yeah,
I don't I don't think that somebody else is going to pay for that for me. And so as it applies to Midland College, They should have been putting money away. They should have been approaching individuals, approaching companies about endowments or gifts for the foundation. None of that was done. And to me, I think that that's a gross abuse of power. And because they're putting this burden on the taxpayer, and that's totally unfair. And what's even more unfair are people in Midland that have lived there their whole lives that are elderly or on fixed incomes. And they say, oh, it's just not going to affect you that much. But if you look at, say a 30-year bond and you're paying X number of dollars more each year, your repayment of their bond is in the thousands. And
Yeah.
I think it's an unfair burden to put on the average taxpayer in Midland.
Yeah, and they try to say it's for the future, and that I don't. Someone even said on Facebook that I don't care about my community. Like you said, my parents are on fixed incomes. They're retired. They're not going to get any kind of exemption from this bond. We found out that they were misleading the public about that as well. And I do, like you said, care for people that are on fixed incomes, not in the oil field, and that don't make a lot of money. I mean, this is a lot of money. I looked at my bond, my statement for my taxes that for this year with the MISD bond and every other bond they threw at us, like 3 or 4 different entities I'm paying. It's $3,000 to $4,000 a year. I could invest that for 30 to 40 years and become a millionaire. I told my son, right? And this is a 30 to 40-year bond, and it's going to be $1.1 billion in 30 to 40 years with interest. Responsible people with money, they look at the interest rate, they look at the total cost, and like you said, they put the money away, or they don't expect someone else to pay for someone else's anything, right? Business, training, whatever. It's not my business. I don't even want to pay one penny. But with that, I do appreciate your time. Anything you want to say before I end this video and call? Go ahead.
I just think with all of the bonds that the average Midland taxpayer is experiencing bond fatigue. And it's like they're tired of paying. It's just like you can only go after money so long until people rise up and fight back. And honestly, I think that my posting the Ring video on Nextdoor, I think that that's made people angry enough that they're going to get out there and vote, and they're going to vote no. I mean, and also I want to say too is that in Midland I've learned that if you oppose a bond, for instance, MISD, if you oppose that bond, then you are vilified as not caring about your kids, not caring about your community, and that could not be further from the truth. And I think that that kind of abusive tactics when they're trying to sell a bond is also wrong. And they started out doing this with this bond, and I think that they kind of stepped back, and they're not going after the average taxpayer now and saying, "Oh, you don't care about our community." So hopefully they stop that type of selling the bond, because I think that that's inappropriate.
Great point. And let's be honest, the people that were behind the MISD bond, they're behind this one as well. It's the same characters, same actors.
I agree.
But with that, I appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and end the video. God bless you. And thank you for posting that, because you're right. I think that video actually spoke volumes. It rocked the city. And if people haven't been paying attention, I'm pretty sure they're paying attention now. So with that, I thank you for your time. God bless you and have a great evening.
Thank you, Nino.
Okay.